All 41 bodies have now been recovered from the scorched wreckage of the Aeroflot plane that crash-landed at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport on Sunday. These are the latest pictures from the crash site. During touchdown, the airliner carrying 78 passengers and crew members on board burst into flames after its tail bumped the ground. 37 people survived the disaster. They're being treated for inhalation burns and post-traumatic stress. Here's how the tragedy unfolded, and just to warn you, you may find some scenes upsetting.
When the plane was in the air, I saw a white flash. It must have been lightning.
We sat near the window. I just turned my head and all of a sudden I saw the burning plane with huge plumes of black smoke.
Пожалуйста, пожалуйста, давайте, ребята, быстрее! Ребят, давайте, давайте. Ну.
In the studio with me now is our senior correspondent, Murad Gazdiev. Murad, pretty horrific scenes that we've been watching there. We've obviously been keeping across the story. What developments have there been?
Well, bits and pieces are emerging. We're putting them together. Investigators and authorities are coming out with statements. We've heard from the pilot. According to him, everything was fine during takeoff. All systems checks. The aircraft was in perfect condition. They took off, and mere minutes into their ascent, they were struck by lightning, and that is when things went very bad. Because first off, it knocked out many of the electronic systems on board, including communications gear. So we're talking here about radios and even backup radios.
We had no communication. We managed to restore it through the emergency frequency on the second radio station. And it was intermittent. That is, after turning on the transmitter, it was only possible to say a few words before losing contact and having to reconnect. The dispatchers helped us. They gave us directions to get to the runway.
What would prove to be even worse is that this lightning strike, whatever malfunction it caused, it took down many other electronic systems like guidance, like autopilot, pilot assist, all sorts of systems that are designed to get an aircraft down safely. Compounding all of that is that the aircraft was very heavy and it had just taken off. It had all its fuel on board, and for whatever reason, they decided to land the aircraft instead of doing circles above the airport around Moscow in order to burn off some fuel, to lighten the aircraft, to make the landing easier. So they went down heavy with passengers, 73 passengers, and all that fuel. And perhaps it was due to pilot error. Perhaps it was due to the lightning strike, the systems being deactivated, the weight, whatever. The aircraft tail section ended up bumping the runway numerous times. Eventually, the inferno started. It burned through the back half of the aircraft. It must have punctured the fuel tanks, and fuel spilled all over the back section. But the aircraft came to a standstill. It came to a stop. And people, this is the really horrible part, because now that they were down safely, people were suddenly faced with flames on all sides, especially in the back section. And it was incredibly hot. This fuel burns very, very hot. The illuminators started melting. These people had seconds left, and we heard really heartfelt stuff. Passengers thanking the crew, cabin crew, for saving their lives. The stewardess pulling people out by the cuffs of their necks. Another steward in the back section of the plane, unfortunately, he perished. He tried to get the doors open to get people out through the back section. He was unable to do that, so he started pushing people from the back in order to get them out quicker. Unfortunately, many of those in the back didn't make it out. 41 casualties, only 37 people survived, many in hospital with burns, with asphyxiation. The other thing, of course, is that investigators are looking at exactly what happened, so it's important not to jump to any conclusions yet. We don't have enough information. And there's, talking about jumping to conclusions, there's a lot of anger among the Russian public and social media about people coming down, evacuating from the plane with their things, with their bags. Some people think that they may have held up the evacuation while they were getting their stuff, which could potentially have led to casualties. But psychologists here warn, don't jump to conclusions. We don't know what happened. We don't know how they got out. Perhaps they had their things already. And these people are facing survivor's guilt, especially in a situation like this, is lifelong trauma. This is something you don't forget. Nevertheless, as I say, let's not jump to any conclusions, speculate further. Wait for the official results. We know that investigators have recovered both black boxes. We also know that they've now recovered all the bodies. And I'm sure there'll be more accurate information emerging imminently.
Yeah, tragic incident. Thank you, Murad Gazdia, for the update on that. Thank you. Aviation expert Fabrizio Poli told us that there's never just a single reason for accidents like this.
Usually when you get struck by lightning, you land as soon as possible and have the airplane checked over. Fortunately, in my case, nothing major had happened to the airplane. We just had it checked by the engineers, and an hour later we were back in the air. But sometimes lightning strike can cause situations like this. An accident always happens for a number of factors. It never happens for one reason. There's usually 6 or 7 things that line up. I mean, obviously the Superjet is a new airplane. This is, one of the very first crashes of this type of aircraft. And so obviously they'll be looking into that as well, see if there's any flaws in the design, just like the 737 MAX that we've had 2 crashes recently, and they found some flaws in the manuals and that Boeing are dealing with. So it's the same here with Sukhoi.
Let's cross live now to Don Courter, who's near the Skilfasovsky Emergency Hospital. Don, firstly, can you explain to us how many patients the hospital's managed to take in and what kind of condition those patients are in?
Well, Nadira, behind me is the hospital where 2 survivors of the crash are being cared for in critical condition. Another 7 people are hospitalized in other locations around the city. In total, 37 out of 78 passengers and crew successfully escaped the flames last night, although many sustaining serious injuries. Now, the Russian health minister is supposed to give a broader statement later today, but earlier she talked about some of the main causes of some of these injuries.
Most of the survivors suffered from burns, gas inhalation or other injuries. All medical services responded quickly.
Across social media, people have released videos of people fleeing from the burning jet. Crew members carried out the evacuation quite quickly, but you can see in the videos how chaotic the situation was. There's also other reports of people scrambling for their luggage, which also contributed to the discord. Now, this is how one woman described waiting news of her friend who was on that flight.
I learned about the tragedy in the media and immediately went to the airport, hoping to get any information about a friend who was on the plane. It's very hard for people waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, but everyone is trying to hope for the best.
Now, as for the relatives, about 50 arrived from Murmansk this morning, when the city actually also declared a 3-day mourning period for those who died. Emergency services met with the relatives earlier this morning to help in the painful process of identifying the bodies.